Hi there. Ramadan Kareem to all of you on this blessed month. Excuse the recycled footage, it's better than just a static image for today's topic, in my opinion. Anyways, I get a certain question frequently, and I thought I could quickly answer it in this video, so I don't have to keep writing essay responses to anyone that asks me on Twitter. On that note, if you do ever want to ask me something, feel free to do so, but please on Twitter. The Faults of Previous Socialist Experiments video is coming soon though, don't worry. What I get frequently asked is this: I'm a young Marxist, and I'd like to contribute to the movement somehow. What should I do? I'll break my answer into points, as there isn't just one thing to do in my opinion. Of course, this is, again, just my opinion, so feel free to add to or criticize these points in the comments. Point number 1. First and foremost, I think you should pursue an education. Any education's fine, but in my opinion, the more technical, the better. Some of you may think this is strange, so let me explain my reasoning. We, as Marxists, are working towards a socialist revolution in our respective countries. As a result of every revolution, historically, there has been significant brain drain, that being a net loss of highly educated technical specialists amongst other members of the intelligentsia. This creates a need for what was deemed in the Russian Revolution as bourgeois specialists, those that know the ins and outs of different complex machineries, organization and maintenance of data, difficult and time-consuming engineering work, amongst many other things. There will be no shortage of poets, writers, or political agitators and the like during the revolution. There will, however, be a shortage of people skilled in management, certain medical professionals, many engineering and other technical specialities, etc. If you truly want to be able to contribute to a fledgling revolution, fantastic. But once power is won by the working class, the construction of socialism begins, and that's when the real revolution happens. The more Marxists have tangible skills outside party work, the better, as it would at least somewhat reduce the burden of specialist scarcity. Even if your nation doesn't have a revolution, you could contribute to a new revolution anywhere in the world by either migrating later on to assist with your knowledge, or, if you're in a particularly well-paid field, assisting those movements monetarily. Point number 2. Read theory. As Lenin said, without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. There exists 101 reading lists around, but a safe, preliminary reading of the classics is always a good place to start off. Engels' Principles of Communism and Socialism, Utopian Scientific, Marx's Wage, Labor, and Capital, Lenin's Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, State and the Revolution, Left-Wing Communism, Infantile Disorder, Stalin's Dialectical and Historical Materialism, a book I personally dislike, but that's down to Stalin's very mechanical writing style. Many love it or disagree with me. Mao's On Practice, On Contradiction, Combat Liberalism, On the Correct Handlings of the Contradictions Among the People, to just name a few. After this, delve headfirst into Marx's works. Capital is an absolute must, Critique of the Gotha Program, The Poverty of Philosophy, and whatever else you feel like after that. Theory is like an endless well. The more you read, the more you'll need to know. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing. As we must have seen by now, there is Marxism and the problem of no one doing the fucking reading. Another important aspect of reading is more intersectional analysis, let's say. Decolonizing literature, or literature focusing on Eurocentrism like Frantz Fanon or Edward Said and Samir Amin. Literature discussing settler colonialism too is very important, especially if you live in a settler colonial society, the US, Australia, Israel, etc. Works like Sakai's White Settlers or Ilham Pape's work on Palestine, for example. Also, be sure to be up to date with the economic analysis of the world. Marxism is not a static theory, and is based in the study of the material conditions in the world around us. Zach Cope's work, Argyri's work on unequal exchange, John Smith, Paul Sweezy, and Samir Amin again. There's so many authors you should at least dip your toes with. If you'd like interesting suggestions, then check out my book recommendations videos. Point number 3. Join an organization. If you don't, you're a solitary figure that pretty much can't do anything. A well-organized and educated group can carry out mass work, help with community organizing and defense, help those in need, the homeless, the unemployed, etc. I personally believe the best example of efficient and coherent organization, especially in urban centers, is that of the Black Panthers. Educate yourself and strive to emulate them. There has to be a reading group, party cell, student association, or other form of organization in your area. If there aren't any, well, it might be up to you to make the first. It doesn't even have to be explicitly Marxist per se, as long as the group is critical of capitalism and its byproducts, racism, sexism, etc. Keep in mind though, this is when reading theory is important. You need to have a coherent theoretical line within yourself so you don't just get sucked into whatever this or that group believes. As much as some people don't like to hear it, much of the time there is a right answer and many, many wrong answers to a certain question regarding theory. The necessity of revolution is an example of such a question. If you're employed, organize within your workplace. Join a union, for example. A good book to introduce yourself to unions is Why You Should Be a Trade Unionist by Len Mikulski. Point number 4. Arm yourself. Now, I'm not telling you to go LARP with an AK. What I'm saying is the knowledge of handling a weapon and knowing your way around all aspects comfortably will never be a detriment. In fact, it only has upsides. Living in Iraq, I have personally benefited from such knowledge, and it doesn't take much for the information to become super helpful wherever you are too. If you happen to live in a country where you have abundant access to ranges, organizations based around their use, etc., then you have no excuse. The SRA in the US is an example of such an organization with a socialist leaning. I believe they have branches all over the US, but don't quote me on that. Consult their website and join. If you happen to live in a country where it's impossible to get a hold of anything, well then I guess theoretical knowledge is better than nothing. There is no shortage of videos on YouTube in that case. I'm unaware of any country that bans it outright, as even the more strict European countries still have licensing you can do, which, although time-consuming and maybe even a little pricey in places, is still nonetheless worth it in my opinion. And point number 5. Tone down the zeal. Almost everyone, especially when they get into something new, tend to be a little overzealous, many times bordering on obnoxious. A silly personal example is, I'm not very into fiction or stories or sci-fi stuff, etc. I can sit and read the most boring and technical works for hours, but hand me a novel and 10 pages in, I'll give up. It just doesn't work with me. That was until I stumbled across a light novel series named Overlord. I think I finished that in under a week or so. I was insufferable for that week. Point being, Marxism has fantastic explanatory power for the world around us. Why capitalism is the way it is, and also comes with logical and well-reasoned theory for how we can change what we perceive to be injustice. A lot of the time, your first readings of these things really does blow you away, and as a result you become almost fanatical, getting into hour-long essay arguments on the internet, at work, or school, and just generally not being a very good representative of Marxism, until you finally cool down. My advice is, calm down. The time you spend arguing is better spent reading theory. And that's about it from my perspective. If you like this video, then please consider supporting me on Patreon, it really does help. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you to Sid Singh, Mass Strike Now, Garlic Bread, Mark Habinski, John Polland, Ad Democracy Expert, Alan Plum, Andy Haywood, Bren Ruffing, Dale McFarlane, L.A. Gearzon, Eric G, Grammar Antifa, Granola Joe, Industrial Robot, Jedi Davion, John Bernstein, Khan, Nook Ringheim Lunde, Liam Sapanen, Libertarian Stalinist, Manda, Mikar Garopoulos, Amar Abdul-Jabbar, Ray Hogginson, Rankel Blancaster, Ring, Sasha Novoseta, Soviet Mystic, Sassi M, Ted Teddington Tedsville, The Turkish Trotskyist, Tristan Durian, Zatarani, Zarin Arsin, Justin Perdomo, Eugene Simonovsky, Job, Parker Cushing, Malinov, Comrade Benito, August Nilsson, Nobody, Jovian Archiver, Pauline McDeasy, Michael R.W., Ferritan, Scott Radburn, My Little Stalin, Caleb Sosoltis, Brandon Prasad, Judah Drury, James Kavanagh, Toki Mukai, Comrade Pengu, and of course Charles. Thank you, Charles. I'll see you in the next one.